Good afternoon, everybody, or at least for most of us. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Crystal Cochran. I am one of the engineered solution specialists for Ferguson in Texas. This is a picture of my kids, not because they will help you in literally any way, shape, or form with your projects, but just to give you guys an idea that, not only is my career based in water, but everything that my family does in life is based in water. It's really helped us to become avid defenders of our natural resources, right? Because we don't only want to protect these resources for work, but we live here. We're enjoying them with you guys. So it's really became a more of a way of life for us. The team that I'm a part of focuses nationally on erosion control and stormwater projects. When we are focused on stormwater, the vast majority of these projects fall into one of these five categories. Urban landscapes. This is going to be, things like suspended pavement systems or maybe rain gardens. And then, there's media and biofiltration, which has some really impressive developments over the last few years. I've seen some projects that have been done with a media that treats bacteria that has a 50-year lifespan. And even more than that, it works with the BMPs that you were already going to be implementing. Filters and screens. This is the category where you're going to want to pay attention if you pay attention to literally nothing else in this presentation. Because this is a way where you can use some really simple, cost-effective pre-treatment devices that are going to make maintenance on your projects so much more palatable. Many of these devices are really simple to install and maintain. And then, the vast majority of them are at the surface, meaning, you're not having to get beneath the surface to maintain them. Alternative surfaces. This means, some creative ways to get your pervious cover count up on your sites, without creating time, money, and maintenance nightmares. Advances in technology have really made it far less stressful to use permeables on your projects. And then, of course, a very popular space efficient storage category. My boss asks all the time, where does your rain go? And it's really this weird little question, but if you think about it, all of our stormwater projects essentially are summed up with this question. So we are going to take a look also at space efficient storage and how we can store some rainwater without creating, future maintenance issues for us. My team at Ferguson spends a great deal of time with specifiers from both the private and public sectors. And really, it doesn't matter which side of the table you're sitting on. The very first question that everybody asks is, how much is this project going to cost me? The second question, without fail, what will it take to maintain it? The days of specifying solutions that we can set and forget don't exist anymore. They are long gone. Now, maintenance is an expected part of these projects. Working with municipalities, contractors, civil engineers, landscape architects, manufacturers, even environmental organizations across the country has really given our team a unique ability to truly learn about the various needs of these different cities and how to meet those needs. And it really does give you a unique perspective on the different BMPs that are out there, the ones that are best suited for which area, geographically. But then, of course, the answer would change depending on that city's ability to be able to maintain that BMP, right? Some cities have more resources available to them or more tools available to them. And if that's the case, for the cities with less, you would maybe recommend a different green infrastructure BMP so that it could continue to function properly for the life of the project. It's really important for you guys to lean on your resources. Many companies now, Ferguson included, offer design assistance to you at no cost. Like when you ask for help with your projects, they're happy to help make recommendations. And, I really encourage you to use them, use these services. Not only does it save you a lot of time and money, but it really helps to ensure that somebody that has been out there, that has seen all these projects go in, that has seen the beautiful outcomes, that has seen the horror stories and everything in between, learns from those past projects, brings it to the table, and makes your project as successful as possible. This is usually a lot more than just like a, hey, what can I use here? Or a quick email. These are resources that will save a significant amount of time. We're talking sending back, not only the proper recommendation, but layouts, CAD details, spec sheets for most of the products. And then, sometimes it even includes pricing to help make sure your project is in budget. So you covered the BMP design, right? Now, what's the most important part? Now you have to make sure that the resources that we're all too happy to help you guys put the BMPs on your plans are going to show up to the job site. make sure that the lowest bidder on the job doesn't save a few bucks by bringing in dirty stone, or maybe the new guy doesn't forget to install the inspection ports on your subsurface storage system. Job site support is equally as important as design support. Ask for it, require it. If someone's helping you to specify a product, make sure they're going to help you with the install too. The installation of BMPs, it's a crucial step in the process. Anything installed incorrectly is more than likely going to usually need to be repaired or replaced really quickly, which is, of course, time and money not very well spent. Many companies and organizations provide support that's unique to municipalities. Again, Ferguson is included in that. Sometimes this looks like helping your team design a new GI project for, every year we're going to design something new to help our city meet their green infrastructure goals. We would love to help with that. There's a lot of organizations out there right now that would love to help make sure you're implementing the right assets for your goals. Other times it's collaborating on an already existing green stormwater project. Maybe it's not performing as well as you'd hoped. And again, many of your local stormwater solutions providers can really help take a lot of that burden off of you, save a lot of Google time, right? Reach out to them and allow them to assist you. Green stormwater infrastructure is a phase that, we're hearing a lot more often all over the country, some states more than others, but just the same, everybody is at least aware that it exists. This is so much more today than just a pocket of green people, right? It is not just like me hugging a tree and saving a turtle and not letting my kids use straws. This is more than that. This is a way where we are designing as naturally as possible. We're allowing developers to build that new shopping mall without directing more untreated stormwater to your drains. Maybe instead you're refilling an aquifer a little bit quicker. So now that you start to see a need for green infrastructure, and some even have requirements, right? I know a lot of cities across the country have actual requirements for a lot of these things. You start to hear all the naysayers, right? Why is this a bad idea? People on your design team, the owners, the city you're building in, whoever, they're going to start to list the many, many reasons why green infrastructure is such a bad idea that you should be scared, right? There's always going to be the concern that the project's going to cost too much. The repairs are going to be too expensive. This is going to be a concern no matter what you're designing. It does not matter if it incorporates GI solutions or not, but the maintenance aspect of it, of course, brings its own unique challenges. Many people worry that these BMPs will be too difficult or expensive to maintain, rendering them virtually ineffective in the long run. I have terrible news for every person in attendance right now. No matter what you do, it is going to cost money. And every single thing that you implement is going to need to be maintained. I don't care what it is, right? So with the right experience and keeping maintenance in mind, you can absolutely create an effective design that will provide stormwater solutions with BMPs that will be simple to maintain, and not just by people that have been using green infrastructure for a long time, but by even inexperienced people, inexperienced maintenance crews, and the people with limited equipment. This is one of the reasons why green infrastructure is so important. If you're in an area with less development, then only about 10% of your stormwater is running off. That is a much more manageable number. It leads to cleaner water, cooler temperatures. It has a lot fewer problems related to their stormwater. But if you're in an area that's more developed, like a lot of us, right? Like I live in San Antonio, the people that are living in Houston, Dallas, New York, whatever. If you're in a heavily developed urban area, about 55% of your stormwater is running off. This increase it's a substantial difference in the stormwater solutions that you're needing to provide. It makes the focus on stormwater in your space a much more serious conversation. At this point, you're not just looking at flooding, which is already, important, but you're focusing on the many issues that we see that come along with the runoff. We work on projects all the time that had like one small area of development and infrastructure, and that space was designed to work, for areas that were whatever the population was expected to be at that time, right? Many years, a lot of growth later, the systems in our more heavily populated areas, again, they're maxed out, right? This creates a further need to focus on green stormwater solutions, especially in these spaces. Sorry, excuse me. Fortunately, by incorporating some of these green stormwater infrastructure BMPs, these are commonly associated with stormwater projects across the country. You guys are able to help mitigate some of these issues, right? Many of these have been implemented nationwide for years now. This allows specifiers, manufacturers, municipalities to learn what works best in each of their respective spaces. And it gives you an idea also of what it takes to maintain these solutions in the long term. When it comes to designing any projects, everybody's needs are a little bit different. The municipality's focus is, of course, a little different than, let's say, the developer. Municipalities are worried about mitigating flooding, right? It's first and foremost. When stormwaters in any given city are severe enough to cause damage to local businesses, to residences, to existing infrastructure, it creates substantial losses for a multitude of people. So flooding is always, of course, thankfully, a top priority for municipalities, counties, parishes. Reducing nutrients and other pollutants in the water. This has become an increasing goal for a lot of the municipalities we work with. Another area where only municipalities are really, I guess, concerned with it is, of course, like recharging the aquifers, right? Keeping stormwater on site solves many challenges associated with runoff, including, ensuring that our town has water to use in the coming months. In addition to this, for the areas that are focusing on treating stormwater, implementing GSI solutions means that you are able to remove a lot of those pollutants on site instead of sending them down to be treated or worried about later. And another reason that municipalities focus is a little different than a developer is that when you're able to use that land to be developed for something more than stormwater detention, it's going to add tax revenue for the city, right? Let's put up a school, a park, a dog park, a grocery store, whatever it is, that's better than a detention pond. For the private developer, they're looking to find ways to meet the requirements of the city they're in without spending any money that's not absolutely necessary. A lot of cities now are offering GSI credits, of course, for developers to they're looking to capitalize on that, right? What incentives can they get to develop in your space? They're trying to do the best they can with the sites that are available to them. Sometimes that means really unfavorable conditions. And public perception matters to the developer, right? They want people to buy their product. They want people to buy their apartment complex, whatever it is. People want to live in areas that are well kept, that are beautiful, that are not going to flood. And if somewhere in there they're able to care for natural resources as well, it's of course a huge bonus. Raleigh, North Carolina, and Mount Pleasant, South Carolina are fantastic examples of municipalities that are providing incentives to their local developers. This is in part in an effort to take some of the financial burden off of the developer and make it a little bit more feasible to incorporate green stormwater infrastructure into the designs in their respective cities, right? If you help to bridge that gap, they're a little bit more likely to actually want to build there. It's really helped to create, better public-private partnerships in these spaces. Municipalities that are implementing these incentive programs have really, like I said, made it less of a, it's me against you, who is this burden going to fall on, but more of a partnership in those spaces. What do these specific stormwater programs have in common? They are some of the best in the country. In working with municipalities nationwide, we've really come to realize that a lot of cities have green infrastructure programs, right? But the ones that have the best programs are the ones that realize that they need to focus on maintenance. Understanding that there is a need to maintain your GSI asset has made the stormwater programs in these cities and many others very successful. They spend time and money to make their future maintenance as easy and cost effective as possible. First, let's take a look at Philadelphia. In my opinion, Philadelphia has one of the coolest, honestly, and best green streetscape programs in the country. They focus a lot on maintenance and they create a lot of different areas where they're willing to utilize green infrastructure practices, which again is unique, right? Not a lot of heavily populated areas are as on board with that yet. So why do we think Philadelphia is so successful? They have a variety of green infrastructure solutions in place, including, bioretention, permeable surfaces, inlet protection devices. And in addition to this, they're willing, like I said, to allow new and innovative solutions to be implemented. This is rare. Nobody likes to be the guinea pig, so it makes them unique. Philly has a good understanding of how much these projects cost, and not just to implement the green stormwater infrastructure BMP that they wanted to, but having 15 years of projects in this space gives them a really good idea of how much these solutions actually cost in the long term. How much is it going to cost to maintain them, to repair them, to replace them? Something else that makes Philadelphia so successful is that they bring together many departments. They don't just count on the person designing the project. They're willing to collaborate on their stormwater plans, their requirements, and their projects. So they get feedback from people that are not just designing the project, but the people that are maintaining them as well. This they use this experience, right? The experience in the field is sometimes different than the experience in the office, and it does a really good job of helping to drive their designs. One of the projects that we work with them on was in an effort to improve maintenance needs on their inlet protection. Philly places a lot of importance on inlet protection. So they had all of these filters in their inlets, of course, keeping trash and debris out of what would be their grain and green infrastructure assets. This is a wonderful, simple solution that itself simplifies maintenance related to, sorry guys. Sorry. Okay, so Philadelphia's Green Inlet Series. They kept a bunch of the trash out of their inlets, right? Philadelphia's huge on inlet protection. It's a wonderful, really simple solution. If you can implement inlet protection, very easy way to keep a lot of trash out. They chose to go with these really cost-effective, high-flow geotextile bags. The bags needed to be replaced like once a year. They came to us and they said, hey, we're tired of replacing these bags. They want to do something differently. So we collaborated. What can we do to make sure that the geotextiles are a higher quality? They wanted the frames to be able to fit into a variety of inlet sizes. They wanted, of course, the product to be durable. And they wanted it to still, of course, be comparable in cost. Nobody can afford for something to increase significantly, even if you need it to be better, right? And they wanted it to be able to be maintained safely and easily. The design that we finally came up with was this 3-piece bag set. Now, instead of it being just a filter, it was one single layer of fabric in between 2 layers of a mesh liner. The fabric was now a woven monofilament fabric, and it didn't have a center seam any longer. These really simple changes improved the life expectancy of this inlet protection devices from 1 year to now they were looking at 2 to 3 years. Of course, this saves time and money by extending the life cycle costs associated with this GIS. This is another Philadelphia project that we were fortunate enough to have been able to collaborate on. Many of their inlets leading to their storm basins are only 1.5 inches high. So they installed all of these bags that were collecting the debris, of course, coming through the inlets, right? The challenge was when you needed to maintain the system. The crew would go out, they would open up the manhole cover, and they would take out the sack. But as you can see in the design, it's challenging. So when they were trying to remove the sack, they realized they were spilling a lot of the contents that were captured. The maintenance crews, were then trying to get stuff out of the catch basin and stuff. Obviously, it was a flawed solution, and we needed to come up with something different. So ultimately, what was decided on was this round geotextile bag sat below the manhole. So when the crews came out and they opened up the lid, they could remove the bag easily, empty it, and return it to the mount. This made maintenance on their inlet protection a lot more simple, safe, effective for them. So it's another way that, of course, was saving money. Another way that the maintenance really drove the design of this project was that in addition to the filtration being used in a better way so that you could maintain it a little better, the city actually wanted to come to us and say, hey, we want this entire stack to be able to capture the smaller particles that's in the stormwater. And, the maintenance team was called out to collaborate on this. And they were like, hey, that's fantastic. But when we go out to empty the sack and it's full of wet sediment, the maintenance is going to be a lot harder, right? We're talking a much heavier sack at this point. So they agreed to compromise. So you can see in the photo, the line in the middle, that's where, the bottom half of the sack, they have it to where it's actually able to capture those smaller particles. And they left the top part for, bypass, where it is able to capture, of course, so, the leaves, trash, cigarette butts, whatever, but the smaller particles will be able to make it through so that they're able to, like I said, to compromise on it and capture what they can and still maintain it easily. This product line actually went on and it won an award for excellence in the GSI area in that city. And it's in no small part thanks to the fact that they were willing to collaborate on this product. It made it cost effective, maintainable, and sustainable
for the long term for Philadelphia. Bioretention, rain gardens, bioswales, these are really popular GSI assets. They're usually one of the first solutions considered, right? They're natural, they're affordable. A rain garden is a depressed area in the landscape that collects the rainwater from a roof, driveway, street. It allows it to soak into the ground. Planted usually with flowers, grass, other vegetation. Rain gardens are usually pretty cost effective, beautiful way to reduce runoff from your property. The maintenance is simple. It can be a little bit more time consuming, especially after like heavy rains or if you live in a heavily populated area. If there's a lot of litter going on in your city, of course, that's going to be a concern. You're going to need to add or replace the vegetation as needed. You're going to need to take care of eroded areas, prune, weed, replace the mulch. Sometimes you're going to need to fertilize. Bioswales are similar, right? This is a landscape feature that collects polluted stormwater runoff, soaks it into the ground, filters out pollution on site. It's similar, like I said, to rain gardens, but they're designed to capture much more stormwater runoff, right? Like so areas coming off of your parking lot or your, driveways, the streets, things like that. So the maintenance on them, again, relatively simple. Relatively cost effective. Remove the debris that's collected, maybe take care of some erosion in the inlets, remove some weeds or invasive plants, replace the mulch and flowers. Again, relatively simple, fairly cost effective. Like I said, maintenance on bioretention, as simple as it can be, is a lot less challenging and time consuming if you take the time to design with pre-treatment in mind. Pre-treatment will help collect sediment. It helps collect sediment and debris while keeping it looking amazing. It dissipates energy, it gives you a lot more time in between needing to replace the mulch and plants on these systems. Plus, it helps to keep them looking beautiful, right? Because anytime we're designing something at our curb line, it's the goal. Can't just work anymore. It has to be pretty too. And while nothing is maintenance free, utilizing pre-treatment in any of your designs, honestly, it does keep your GI asset looking good and functioning the way that you intended it to. And it definitely cuts down on your maintenance costs. It's going to prevent your systems from looking something like this. These systems probably are not functioning the way that they were intended to at this point. Of course, pre-treatment device that you choose for your green asset, it's going to depend on a lot of factors, right? No size fits all on any of these projects. The size of the watershed that you're looking at, it's going to make a difference on the asset that you would choose for these projects. It's going to need to take a layer of trash, sediment, and debris while slowing the flow of the incoming stormwaters so that your rain garden can, survive a little longer. I've seen a lot of rain gardens, and I can tell you without a doubt that the ones that have something like this on it look and function much better. Simple to install options are great for both new builds and retrofit applications. So even if you already have an existing rain garden in place, you can absolutely go back with something like this and still add a pre-treatment device to it to extend your maintenance cycles. Like I said, this is really just a way to keep the feature on your smaller watersheds looking amazing, working properly without creating maintenance nightmares. Systems like this, they're designed to be maintained by like one person, a trash bag, and a shovel. You really cannot get more simple maintenance. It's as simple as lifting the grate. You clean out the debris from the catch basin, and then, I don't know if you can see, but there's a filter screen usually on the front of them. Spray it off or scrape off the filter screen, replace it. It is significantly less maintenance than replacing mulch, plants, or rehabbing inlets, dealing with erosion issues on your stormwater solution that you had put in place. If you're treating a larger watershed, there's some more advanced options. The idea is the same, but now it's a formal sump, right? So it still requires one person, very little tools or equipment to maintain, and again, lowers the maintenance costs associated with your GI asset noticeably. This is typically what we start to see if you don't have some sort of pre-treatment device on these projects. Inlet erosion almost always, and of course, instability. This is going to cost quite a bit more to come in and repair or maintain than something like this. Again, a pre-treatment device saves a lot of time and money. So if you're designing some sort of a rain garden, bioswale, something like that on your projects, I would urge you to consider some sort of pre-treatment device to make maintenance much more palatable. Bypass is really typical in rain garden or other GI solutions. Of course, you need to make sure that in large storm events, you're able to get into the conveyance system at a much faster rate. In order to allow water through quickly, usually the holes in the grate are pretty large, right? So even just the very simple addition of something like this, a very, cost-effective filter bag insert into the green infrastructure bypass really does a fantastic job of collecting a lot of the little particles and debris that would otherwise have worked its way down into your system. Again, really simple maintenance, remove the lid, empty the bag, put it back, replace the lid. A lot of major cities, including New York City, like to put out rain gardens in their right-of-way spaces. A lot of us are out of space, right? And we're trying to finagle things in anywhere we can fit it. Anywhere where there's a place we can put a little rain garden or add some sort of media or add a permeable surface. So we're looking at doing them in our stormwater projects now. You can see here in this bottom photo, this is not functioning properly. It does not have pre-treatment on it, and it's obviously clogged. One of the things that we've seen implemented in place of standard rain gardens are these little gravel pits with sod over them, like in the upper right-hand corner. I think a lot of times people, hear the word green, or they've decided that if the solution doesn't, attract local pollinators or save the bees, then it doesn't count. But it's just not the case. Sometimes we're all doing literally anything in our power to buy ourselves some time, right? We need time at the site to let the rainwaters infiltrate and dissipate rather than tax our conveyance systems further. New York City is no different. Like I said, they wanted to implement these gravel pits. They came, they said, hey, what can we do to make them function properly with the simplest maintenance like humanly possible? So we recommended, of course, there be a filter placed at the inlet at the end. And again, maintenance really simple. A guy comes out, they can empty these inlet protections and then put it back. Again, maintenance is completed very quickly. Sorry. Another thing that New York City did, they thought, man, rain gardens are amazing, right? We love rain gardens. So we want to put as many as we can all over this borough. So they did. They implemented thousands. They set out to, implement these green infrastructure projects. So all the little green dots you guys see, those are rain gardens. It was great in theory, and anyone who appreciates, green stormwater, like I'm sure a lot of us on this call, we appreciate it, right? Like our heart, it's in the right place. They realized pretty quickly this was going to be much more expensive to maintain than they'd ever thought possible. So again, sitting around the design table with the maintenance crews, with the public works department, with the other people that are working on these projects, as a designer, it's really going to make sure that maintenance is at the forefront of your mind when you're designing these GI assets. It will save a lot of headache later. It's something like one maintenance crew on this project was able to maintain like 50 to 75 assets a month. So then, of course, they needed more crews, more trucks to get the crews around, right? So like 10 crews later, they realized they were in over their head and kind of upside down on maintenance. So they started looking for other solutions. So then, when they're comparing other options, they're comparing them to the rain gardens, right? We need the same effect with the least maintenance possible. So they decided to say, what, we have to figure out a way to make maintenance more palatable, reduce the cost of maintenance, but still use a green infrastructure asset. They came up with this innovative porous gutter line application. You guys can see it here. Ultimately, they converted their gutter lines from conventional gutters with inlets, right? Sending stormwater into pipes, allowing them to intercept rainfall in the gutter line. This really gave them a chance not just to implement a green infrastructure asset, but it helped to mitigate flooding, right? They are taking some of the strain off of their already largely taxed sewer systems. And any way they were able to keep, I'm sure like any of us, right? If you can keep and treat some stormwater on site, it's saving us money in the long run. This was a fantastic way for them to do that. The cross section is a system that they designed. See it here. They used precast porous concrete panels, again, using an advancement in technology to their advantage, right? This really helped to keep maintenance in mind. They used precast porous concrete panels instead of pour in place. So if you guys needed to maintain, let's say something broke, or there's something that was going on at that site where you needed to take out a panel, you can easily take out the panel. And that's a lot easier to replace than cutting, patching, repairing, pour in place porous concrete on site. Most of the specs for porous concrete, at the very least, you're talking having to cure 14 days. That's not ideal for any of our projects in any city I've ever been in my life. So if you can replace it with a precast panel that's already ready to go that you can drive on immediately, obviously that's going to save a lot of time on maintenance. Using these panels, they also cut down on the install time, right? Significantly reducing again the amount of time the roadways were closed. Local businesses aren't affected as long as that's a big deal. I live in an area where right now, probably like a lot of us, there's a lot of maintenance going on. There's a lot of construction going on. And I eat at restaurants often that are like, oh, we're going out of business because there's been construction in front of our restaurant for so long that we can't keep up. Nobody wants to come here. That's avoidable. Let's just design with that in mind. In addition to the porous gutter lines, New York City decided to increase the volume. Like I said, they were looking to mitigate flooding as well, right? So by adding the bottom part here, the subsurface storage system that's under the precast panel, they were able to essentially double the storage capacity for the site. So now, you're providing a stormwater benefit in multiple ways. Maintenance absolutely drove the decision to install the system rather than to continue with the rain garden plan. In order to maintenance on these gutter lines, in order to maintain them, really, you just need a back truck. So now you're talking like one guy with a back truck driving around cleaning these panels in the gutters rather than like 10 crews and 10 trucks driving around all over New York City cleaning up the rain gardens. Precast porous concrete panels, like I said, they come to the site already ready to be installed, right? So one of the greatest things about the panels is sometimes maintenance isn't just about the product itself. What if you need to maintain the area beneath the panels? If you're using a precast porous concrete panel, again, you can just lift it, take care of it. Maybe there's a pipe underneath that needs to be repaired or replaced. You'd be able to conduct your business, put the panel back and go on about your day, which again is a lot easier than some of the other solutions that you would look at for this space. As with any GI practice, maintenance, it really needs to be considered largely when you're designing with a permeable surface. Sometimes I see specifiers incorporate permeables in an effort to like check that box, right? Like, okay, we have the amount of pervious cover needed for the site. It's time to move along with my day. Why not make it work for you? Many times we use alternative surfaces as an alternative to traditional inlets. This helps to keep untreated stormwater from entering our pipes and ending up in the local lakes, the rivers, the bays, what have you, right? When you design with permeables, put them in places where you can direct the runoff to them. There's no need to create an entire permeable parking lot. You can usually move the same amount of stormwater with a fraction of the area. Make sure you're keeping the run-on ratios in mind. If you're directing a large amount of stormwater to that area, you're going to need to maintain it probably more frequently, right? So sometimes expanding the run-on row even slightly is going to cut down on the maintenance cost by just extending the cycle even slightly. When you're designing with permeables, consider what's around your site. If you're able to add some vegetation around the permeable area, it's going to significantly cut down on the amount of sediment, debris, trash, little pieces of mulch, whatever, that are going to reach your permeable surface. Again, of course, eliminating the need for maintenance as frequently. Consider product alternatives. Sometimes there's a better solution for your space than the one that you were maybe considering. There's quite a few products out there now. So it definitely helps to know about them all and pay attention to what you're specifying for each project. There's a lot of different ways to use porous concrete. I've worked on projects where it's in alleyways, gutter lines, even like bike paths and things like that. If you can design using porous concrete or precast porous concrete panels, you're really going to cut down on a lot of the maintenance costs. And like I said, a lot of times you can just direct your stormwater to some of those areas rather than having a really large area that you're utilizing it for. When you have areas like this, that have standing water during your rain event, adding a few porous panels to these really it mitigates it, right? Like this is a project that was in Florida. After a really heavy rain event, you could see the water has dissipated and all the debris and sediment that was in the stormwaters is now sitting here at these panels. So again, makes maintenance really simple. Back truck can come and just take care of this area rather than you having to deal with this later down the line somewhere in your stormwater runoff. Cellular confinement systems. These are really popular right now, and not just as a permeable surface, but more of a non-formal surface that really just happens to be permeable. It's no different than if you were designing with grass or gravel, except the maintenance on it is a lot less. Systems like this, the maintenance is essentially non-existent. If you're looking at grass or gravel, we all know obviously that requires quite a bit of maintenance in the future. If you're not having to come back and refill the road, you're not having to come back and drag it, it definitely, again, saves you time and money. This is a project where they were using this parking lot at a boat ramp, and you can see, years later, you can see where the line is where they were using the cellular confinement and not, they're not having to deal with the rutting, ponding, uneven areas, potholes, any of that. And in addition to that, they're of course getting the added stormwater benefit of conveyance and detention. So highly recommend cellular confinement systems if you're looking at designing with a non-formal surface. They support traffic load ratings. They're ADA compliant. You're able to use them in a lot of areas where you don't need, concrete or a formal paver. A lot of times it's at the fraction of the cost. So on the front end of your project, usually you're saving money. But again, little to no maintenance is a huge deal. Knowing that you're not going to have to maintain it for years to come, that's definitely a savings. Fire lanes, walking paths, overflow parking, lay down yards. They're just some of the areas I really see products like this utilized really successfully. Various types of fill are used in them, like I said, grass or gravel, and it's more affordable than other products. Again, very, very little maintenance. Another area where maintenance is really just a nightmare. If you're working on, DOT projects or even just city roads, the edge of the roadway is an area where if there is no curb or shoulder, you're probably looking at some sort of erosion like you see here. Sometimes I see people try to utilize products like this on the top left. It's not meant for this application, right? You get an E for effort. You're obviously trying to provide a solution, but at some point you're really just throwing, good money after bad with solutions like that. But if you come in with something, like I said, like cellular confinement on the shoulder, you can see, not only are you making it safer for vehicular traffic, but that municipality is not going to have to come out and refill this area repeatedly. Of course, again, saves a lot of time and money for future years. Open joint permeable paver systems. These are really popular options in the permeable space. A lot of that is because of maintenance. The pavers themselves, they're rather large. They have notches on the sides that keep a 1/4 inch gap. This eliminates the need for fill, but in addition to that, it locks the system together, creating a monolithic structure, right? So it allows for some move without the separation, again, reducing the need for so much future maintenance. Because open joint permeable paver systems are meant to support traffic loads, you see them often used, in parking stalls, on parking lots, or in on-street parking. Many times, again, they're designed to act as inlets, right? Cutting down on the need for traditional inlets. Of course, that's again cutting down on maintenance, right? If you don't have inlets and you're not having to protect those inlets, you don't have stormwater flowing through the inlets, you're not having to worry about the debris that's in that stormwater that would have went through your inlets. Drawdown tests on open joint permeable paver systems, they are amazing. They show that they install at like 1,000 inches an hour, which is kind of insane. But obviously, it means, you have more time before you're having to worry about maintenance, right? If you're maintaining a filled paver and they come out, like I said, with a vac truck, of course, you're going to have to go in and replace the fill as well, right? So that's more time, that's more money. So again, if you're looking at something like this, I really highly recommend you use a non-filled permeable paver system. Again, just to cut down on the amount of money you're going to have to spend on maintenance in the future. Subsurface storage systems are really popular now. Like I said, a lot of times we're trying to use our spaces, right? We do not want to give any more of them to the detention ponds. Traditionally, I see most detention systems or subsurface systems used, for detention and infiltration, but I see them, under permeable pavers, in green streetscape projects, under bioretention, combined with some of the cool medias we talked about earlier. And then for harvest and reuse, like if you live in an area like mine where it never rains and you're kicking scorpions off your porch at night, harvest and reuse is a fantastic option for that space. So you see subsurface systems used pretty frequently in all of these applications. And just like with anything else, if you're installing something, you need to make sure it can be maintained. So if you're looking at a subsurface storage system, that's no different. Make sure you're specifying a system that has, inspection ports. So that you can see when the system's ready to be maintained. It also needs to have, maintenance modules. how are you maintaining the subsurface system? So, not only are you, I think, limiting the maintenance that's needed by using a subsurface system, right? It's probably going to need a lot less maintenance below the surface with the addition of pre-treatment at the inlet and it being underground rather than like a detention pond. But now, if you implement something that has a place where maintenance is readily available to the people maintaining it, it is a much easier, cost-effective way to take care of your detention systems. Nothing is one size fits all. We kind of touched on this earlier. Every city is a little different. Take a look at your designs. What's your site look like? What space are you working in? What are the pollutants in that area that you're worried about? Everything. Are there hills? Are there mountains? Is it flat? Is there a beach? All of these things matter to your project. So nothing is a one size fits all. That's why it's so important to lean on your local resources and ask for input in these projects. Other things to consider, of course, maintenance, budget, right? If you can't afford the project, you have a problem, but there's probably a solution that you can afford. Again, reach out to the experts in that space, ask them what's available for that area. Equipment is a big deal. You want to make sure before you do recommend a project that they're able to actually maintain it, that they have the equipment available to them. And then, of course, expectations are a big deal. Not only, like I said, nothing is just, there's enough products out there where you don't need to specify something that works. You have the ability now to specify something that works and is beautiful, right? It needs to look good too. So keep those things in mind. And then, of course, for final thoughts, design with maintenance in mind. I really strongly encourage you guys to do that. It would help, not only take some of the bad press off of green stormwater infrastructure solutions, but it'll make everyone's life a lot easier moving forward. Pre-treatment is the best, fastest, cheapest way to do that. There's a ton of pre-treatment devices out there. Again, ask your local experts to help you guys implement the solution that's best for you. And collaboration is absolutely key. There are cities out there, there are other departments out there that have already implemented something similar, and they can tell you, what has worked, what hasn't, and give you guys a lot of input that will help you make your life much simpler. That's it. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I will stick around if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat already. And if you haven't put your question in the chat, go ahead and do that now. Thank you, Crystal, for presenting. So let's see. The first question is, what types of monitoring or inspection protocols are recommended to ensure these new devices are functioning effectively? And are there any built-in features for performance tracking?
Ooh, good question. So I'm sorry because I cannot see the chat, so bear with me. But every city is different, every manufacturer is different. There are some, I would say, probably more so the subsurface systems probably do have some things more so than the products you're going to see at the surface that will tell you, hey, it's time to do something about the maintenance on this project. But if you have a specific question, let me know, like, oh, I know we're going to use this filter on this. What do I have? I can say out of all the projects that I've done and all the products I've worked with, most of them do not have something, but that is a really good idea that will tell you, hey, kind of like your water filter, right? Hey, it's time to change this. I don't see that really often. I think usually it's going to depend on the solution you're looking to provide and the product that you're recommending. And again, the person that you're working with, like, let's say you were to call whoever, let's say you call me and you're like, hey, I'm working on this detention project. We want to do some sort of subsurface system and I recommend a system to you guys. You need to ask that person, hey, what is the maintenance cycle look like for this product? How often should we expect to have to maintain it? They're probably going to say it depends, right? Because it always does. But, just keep things in mind, like, what's around, how much trash, sediment, and debris are you expecting? Again, I highly recommend pre-treatment. If you're talking about maintaining pre-treatment devices, they're usually at the surface. So I would say it's recommended that you guys just get on a routine maintenance schedule, right? Like every 6 months, Bob goes around, checks the filter. If it needs to be emptied, empty it. It probably wouldn't hurt to empty it since he's already there. That's probably what I would recommend for most of those devices.
Okay. And next question is, are you able to provide references or cost/benefit analysis to help explain maintenance cost to assist with management approval?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at something specific, I will definitely be happy to help with that. I know, like I said, it's our biggest challenge, right? The areas that require these solutions to be implemented, maintenance was definitely the afterthought. And so now we're having to deal with all those maintenance issues, you know. So yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at something specific, if you want to, forgive me because I can't see anybody and I can't see the chat, but if you want to get with me, take down my information, I'm happy to help with whatever it is you're working on, provide some sort of maintenance information to help you kind of bridge that gap and provide the information to who you're working with.
Okay. And the next question is, how effective are porous concrete gutters at filtering out pollutants from stormwater? And are they suitable for use in areas with high pollutant loads?
Yeah. Forgive me because again, I don't know what the list looks like on here, but so again, they're in New York City gutter lines right now. Outside of that, there's some precast porous concrete panel projects I have been on in New Orleans. One of them is like literally behind like a bar/restaurant area. I would say they're surviving the pollutants just fine. I would actually argue that it's probably a really good place for them, right? Because we're the areas where we have the biggest issues with our stormwater. As soon as the water hits the pavement, it's picking up something, and that's a problem. So I'll see, again, if you want to reach out to me or put your contact information. Rebecca, I don't know if you're able to share, whoever's asking, but if you want to share your contact information, I'm happy to see if there's some sort of testing data that can be shared as far as like TSS removal or whatever it is you're looking to treat with the panels. I would say, I know there's some different opinions on it, right? Because it is, for the most part, an opinion. Some people like precast panels, any porous concrete, any porous products, they're usually not approved as necessarily a water quality feature in that, oh, this is removing bacteria from your stormwater. But it's something that is, I mean, you got to think, if you have, let's say, permeable surfaces above your subsurface detention system, there's probably not going to be too much in that detention system by the time you go, if you're using permeables to get water in, right? By the time it goes through the permeables, through the rock it's sitting on, through the ground, into your system, it's probably pretty clean water at that point. So I would say it depends on the city you're working in and their requirements, but I'm happy to help provide whatever information I can to help you with that.
Okay, next question is, how do subsurface storage systems affect groundwater recharge?
Ooh, good question. It will depend on the design of the system. So projects, again, every project's different, right? It always depends. Projects that are designed with, let's say, a liner. Let's say you're working in an area like Louisiana where the water, you're digging holes that are filling up with water as you're digging them. Usually those projects are designed with a liner, and it's usually going into some sort of, drain, taking it out of your system if it were to be full. If you're in an area where there's clay soils, if you're in an area where you're probably having a hard time infiltrating, then there's usually some sort of liner involved and the water is taken off to wherever else. If you're in an area where you're able to infiltrate pretty well, then you're not going to see, I don't think, much of a difference. I'll see if there's some data on that. Again, if you want to send a specific question with your contact information, I'll get you some data on that. But if you're in an area where, like Central Texas or something where there's soils that are infiltrating pretty well, then you're not going to see a lot of issues, right? The system is just there to mitigate flooding.
Okay. And it looks like we have another question. Are you aware of any problems relating to geotextiles as they break down and generate potential pollutants to stormwater, such as microplastics?
Yeah, of course. I do know that this is of course a newer problem, right? So let me start by saying any of the plastic products that my team would recommend for any space are made from 100% recycled material. This does not help with microplastics, but at least it like you sleep a little better at night, right? That you're at least doing something. As far as microplastics go, of course, I think it's something that everybody is aware of now. I would say no matter what you're going to put somewhere, there's some problem, right? If you're putting CMP in the ground, there's an issue. If you're putting, there's always going to be something there that somebody is going to worry about. As far as geotextiles specifically, I do know that some of the manufacturers that we work with pretty often are currently working on testing data on that. And again, because it's a newer issue, it's something that they are working to mitigate to offer a solution that doesn't have that issue that comes up.
Okay, and before we get to the next question, we have a comment from Kristen saying, thank you very much for your message of the importance of pre-treatment and to encourage developers to look beyond the cost of initial construction.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much.
And then we have another question, which is, how do the porous surfaces react to road salt?
Oh, another good. You guys are great. This is a great. So there is actually some data on that, and I have photos. Again, I cannot see who's asking these questions, but if you want to share, or if Rebecca will share, I'm happy to email you some stuff. There are some projects in Maine. Again, a lot of them are in areas where there's snow, right? So of course there is salt being applied. There are plows going over them. I've stood on these projects. They're doing very well. I think that some of the products that are available now have changed a little bit because of that. I think maybe 15 years ago when they were first being implemented in the Northeast, there were projects where they were having some issues because of that, and they went back and re-engineered, I think, some of the solutions to mitigate that issue. So now they've had no issues. Like I said, I've stood on products in the Northeast that the projects are doing very well.
Okay. And then we have a question about if backwashing is needed for porous surfaces.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
We have a question if backwashing is needed for porous surfaces.
I don't, not to my knowledge. Like, I know typically what I see is, let's say once every 6 months or once a year, if you have a permeable surface on any project, someone comes out with a vacuum truck and takes care of it. Typically, if it's not, let's say the city of El Paso's project, right? The city usually has vac trucks that are available. If it's a private project, most vac companies will come out, 4 hours at a time and take care of it. That's more than enough usually to take care of your permeable area. And it's fairly cost effective. Of course, it varies by state. But again, if you need help finding somebody in that space, please let me know. I'm happy to try to point you in the right direction. But typically I see vac trucks, and then I see, if you're using a panel or like the precast porous concrete panels I showed, or if you're using, a non-filled surface, then you can usually take that panel out. And, I've seen people even like pressure wash one panel and replace it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, we'll see if he responds in the chat.
Sorry.
While any final questions come in, we got just a couple more minutes. Thank you, Crystal, so much for presenting this so much great information. And if any of our attendees missed a portion of this workshop, it has been recorded. It'll be up on our website in about 24 hours. And we have a great lineup of workshops. There's another one starting in just about 5 minutes on active treatment for industrial stormwater. And then we have a workshop on tools and tips for creating green infrastructure using compost. So that's a great one to go after this workshop. So you might want to catch that one. That one is going to be at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And then we have a construction site, BMPs, and effective communication at 2 p.m. Pacific time, as well as many more for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. So head over to stormwaterawareness.org and you can register for any of those workshops. So thank you, Crystal, and thank you everyone for coming.